I remember the night clearly, for I was there in silence, observing as always. My name is Alvazarius, a watcher of tales, and on this particular evening, I found myself drawn to a cozy suburban home glowing with warm lamplight. Inside, 9 friends gathered for a slumber party, blissfully unaware of the lurking presence that I, an unseen narrator, could sense in the shadows. Pillows and blankets were strewn across the living room floor. Jadelyn, the host for the night, had decorated her basement den with twinkling fairy lights and scented candles, giving the space a warm, inviting glow. The air smelled of buttered popcorn and sweet candy. In one corner, Big Mom 26 fussed over a spread of snacks, bowls of potato chips, a plate of cookies, and even a tray of colorful boba teas. Ever the caregiver of the group, Big Mom 26 insisted everyone stay well fed, offering refills and extra marshmallows for hot cocoa. Nearby on the couch, Red Bull 777 bounced with restless energy, his knee jiggling. He had already guzzled 2 cans of energy drink, living up to his nickname. Shy Torn sat cross-legged on a plush rug, hugging a pillow to her chest with a timid smile as she listened to the chatter. Next to her, Orf was animatedly telling a ghost story, his voice low and dramatic, wiggling his fingers in the air to spook his friends. First Forever interrupted often with playful skepticism. "No way that happened, Orf. I'd have been the first to run if I saw that ghost," he quipped, earning laughs from the others. Clenwai, ever neat and composed, quietly picked up stray popcorn bits from the floor, rolling her eyes at the story yet inching closer to listen. Ellen reclined in a pile of cushions, her eyes half closed in contentment as she sipped a cup of bubble tea through a wide straw. And then there was Lotion. He lay on his belly across a giant beanbag, feet kicking lazily in the air. A mischievous grin played on his face as he sipped his own boba tea, the cup decorated with little cartoon ghosts. Lotion's eyes gleamed with mischief. I could tell he was the type who might pull a prank at any moment. In fact, every now and then, he'd quietly blow into his straw and shoot a tapioca pearl across the room whenever Orf's story reached a tense moment, making someone yelp in surprise. Each time, he'd stifle a laugh and feign innocence, leaving the others playfully scolding him. "Lotion, cut it out!" Despite the laughter and lighthearted teasing, the atmosphere remained cozy and safe. The friends were clad in their comfiest pajamas, Jadelyn in satin pink PJs, Red Bull 777 in a superhero tee and shorts, and Lotion proudly sporting onesie pajamas patterned with smiling sloths. A friendly argument was brewing about who deserved to wear the toy crown that sat on the coffee table. It was a silly gold-painted crown Jadelyn had brought out as a prize for their games that night. They had jokingly decided that whoever told the scariest story or won the most games would be declared the slumber king or queen and don the crown. Bonbon, with her love of theatrics, had been especially keen on that title. She was wearing a cape made from a bedsheet and had placed the crown jauntily on her head earlier, proclaiming herself Queen Bonbon to much laughter before setting the crown back down. At that moment, Bonbon was sprawled on the floor by the flickering television, giggling at Orf's over-the-top ghost story. The entire scene was pure, innocent fun, a memory of youth on a calm night. As Alvazarius, I found myself smiling at their camaraderie. Little did they know, the true story of the night was about to unfold in a way none of them expected. Shadows and flickering lights. It started subtly. Orf's ghost story was reaching its climax, a tale about a lonely spirit knocking on a bedroom window, when the lights dimmed and flickered, once, twice, then out. The basement was plunged into semi-darkness. The only illumination, the pale blue glow of the paused TV screen and the string lights now blinking erratically. A chorus of confused groans and laughter rose. "Okay, who forgot to pay the electric bill?" First Forever joked, trying to dispel the sudden tension. Jadelyn frowned, glancing at the light switch across the room. Power outages were unusual here. Big Mom 26 clicked her flashlight on. Of course she had come prepared with one, ever the mom friend, and the beam revealed perplexed faces. Lotion's face, however, showed a sly smile. From my unseen vantage, I could sense he was only half serious in his nonchalance, perhaps suspecting a prank. He sipped his boba tea loudly through the silence, the slurping sound comically magnified. Bonbon tossed a pillow at him. "Don't do that, Lotion! You'll make me need the bathroom!" She laughed, though her voice trembled just a bit. Then came a soft thump. In the shadows, something fell off the coffee table. When Big Mom 26 swung her flashlight toward the sound, several of the friends gasped. The gold toy crown was gone. The spot on the table where Bonbon had placed it was now empty, save for a few stray candy wrappers. On the floor lay the board game box it had been resting on, knocked over. "All right, who's trying to steal my crown?" Bonbon joked nervously, crawling on all fours to search under the couch. Her playful tone couldn't hide the quiver in her words. Shy Torn got up and hugged Jadelyn's arm, eyes wide in the flickering gloom. Red Bull 777 leapt up, jittery, and announced, "If this is a prank, it's not funny, guys." His voice cracked slightly, betraying his nerves despite the bravado. I felt it then, a chill in the air that even I, as an observer, could not ignore. The temperature in the basement seemed to drop, and a faint whisper echoed against the walls. It was unintelligible, like a distant breeze, carrying words from far away. Clenwy rubbed her arms. "Is it just me, or did it get really cold all of a sudden?" she murmured. The friends instinctively huddled a bit closer. Lotion, however, remained apart, calmly scanning the room with narrowed eyes. He took another deliberate sip of his drink, the ice clinking. I could see the gears turning in his head. Was this really a prank, or something else? He didn't seem scared, more intrigued than anything. In the darkness, the whites of his eyes and his mischievous grin stood out. Without warning, the string of fairy lights lining the walls began to flicker in a rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat. Dim, bright, dim, bright. The TV, which had been paused, suddenly unpaused itself and then skittered through channels, stopping on a static-filled screen. The ghost story Orf had been telling was about a knock on a window, and right then there came a knocking sound from the small basement window above the couch. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the glass. Shy-Torn squealed and buried her face in Jadelyn's shoulder. Orf's mouth hung open. Even he couldn't have planned such an eerie coincidence. Jadelyn stood, trying to muster courage. I'll check the breaker. Maybe it's just a power surge," she stammered, edging toward the stairs. Big Mom 26 followed protectively, flashlight beam jittering along the walls. But Lotion held up his hand. "Wait," he said, voice surprisingly steady. Everyone paused to look at him. In that moment, I saw Lotion's playful demeanor shift slightly. His grin faded to a determined smirk. He was still unfazed, but now clearly on alert. "Let's all stick together, okay? Just in case." His tone was casual, but there was a hint of authority that calmed them. Jadelyn nodded and stayed put. The knock on the window came again, louder. Red Bull 777, trying to act fearless, aimed his phone's flashlight at the window. Nothing was there, just the backyard darkness beyond. Yet the knocking persisted, as if an invisible visitor was demanding entry. Suddenly, Bonbon, who had been peering under the couch for the crown, let out a small yelp. "Guys, She slowly stood up. Something was clutched in her hand. As Big Mom 26 turned the flashlight toward her, we saw it. The missing crown. Bonbon had found it under the couch, but it was different now. The cheap trinket looked aged, its plastic gems glinting with an unnatural red hue in the erratic light. It was as if it had transformed from a toy into a relic of some long-lost kingdom. Bonbon's back was to us as she rose, strangely stiff. "Bonbon," First Forever called, "You found it? Hey, are you okay?" Bonbon didn't respond. She stood unnaturally still. Then slowly, she turned to face her friends. I felt a jolt, as if the very air pulsed with dread. Bonbon's eyes, usually bright and full of laughter, were now clouded and dark. Her head cocked at an odd angle, and on her face was a chilling smile that did not belong to her at all. Possessed by the Slumber King. When Bonbon spoke, her voice was distorted, layered with a deep echo that resonated off the basement walls. "So," she said, each syllable drawn out mocking, "this is the gathering of would-be kings and queens. She raised the crown in her hand, and the friends could only stare in shock. This wasn't Bonbon talking. Something else was speaking through her. I recognized it at once, an ancient presence, a mischief maker from beyond. It had been roused by their play, by the notion of crowning a slumber king. And now here it was, claiming the title for itself. The friends recoiled. Jadelyn covered her mouth in horror. Orf stumbled back against the couch, whispering, It's the ghost from the story." His knees were shaking. Clenwy dropped the handful of popcorn bits she'd nervously collected, eyes wide and tearing up. Big Mom 26 instinctively moved in front of Jadelyn and Shy Torn as if to shield them, though her own hands trembled. Red Bull 777's bravado failed entirely. He was pale, rooted to the spot, as if the very air had turned to glue. First Forever, usually quick to speak, found no words now, his competitive smirk long gone, replaced by open-mouthed fear. Bonbon, or rather, the entity controlling her, slowly placed the crown atop her own head. In the dim, flickering light, Bonbon's familiar face looked like a grinning mask of someone else entirely. "All hail the Slumber King," she intoned with a cruel, playful sarcasm. Her voice reverberated, and a draft of cold wind swept through the room, scattering napkins and causing the candle flames to gutter. Shy Torn whimpered, clinging to Big Mom 26. Jadelyn managed a shaky step forward, her voice quavering. "Bonbon, this isn't funny. Stop it." But the thing wearing Bonbon only laughed, a sound like dry leaves scraping on pavement. "Bonbon is resting," the voice crooned. "I am the Slumber King, and this is my domain now." The crowned figure took a step forward, and the others stepped back in unison, a mixture of terror and disbelief on their faces. I watched, heart pounding. Yes, even a seasoned observer like me felt the dread in that moment. Yet amid the fear, one person held firm. Lotion. He hadn't moved from his spot by the beanbag. In fact, as the others shrank away, Lotion stepped forward, casually positioning himself between the possessed Bonbon and his friends. His slippered feet stopped just a yard from Bonbon. I could see the contrast. Bonbon's body rigid and unnatural, and Lotion standing loose-limbed and relaxed, head tilted in curiosity. "Well, Your Majesty," Lotion said, and I could hear the unmistakable teasing lilt in his voice. "Welcome to our humble party." He gave a little bow, as if greeting royalty, but there was a mocking edge to it. I almost laughed aloud. What bravery or foolishness was this? The others gaped at Lotion as if he'd lost his mind. The Slumber King's eyes narrowed. Bonbon's hand twitched as if restraining an impulse to lunge. "You dare mock me, child!" The spirit snarled through Bonbon's lips. I could see Bonbon's fingers clench and unclench around the edges of her pajama pants as the entity seethed. The lights above flickered more violently, bulbs buzzing. The television screen cut from static to a black screen displaying a single word in ghostly white text. B-O-W. A palpable wave of pressure emanated from the possessed girl, like a sudden weight in the air. I felt it push against me, and clearly the friends did too. Jadelyn and Orf sank to their knees involuntarily, as if the gravity in the room had doubled. First, Forever and Red Bull, 777, both dropped down from the force, eyes wide with panic. Even Big Mom 26, who fought to stay standing for the sake of those behind her, found herself hunched, trembling with effort. The Slumber King was trying to force them all to bow. But when I looked at Lotion, he was still standing, slightly hunched but on his feet, teeth gritted, resisting the invisible pressure. "Bow!" the entity hissed again, and Bonbon's arm shot out unnaturally fast, aiming to grab Lotion by the throat with inhuman strength. What happened next amazed everyone, including me, the silent chronicler. Lotion didn't jump back or cower. Instead, he reacted in the most unexpected way, with a sharp, playful laugh. In one smooth motion, he thrust out the object he'd been holding, his cup of boba tea. Bonbon's grasping hand closed not around Lotion's neck, but around the plastic cup as he shoved it toward her. The cup's lid popped off from the force, and cold milky tea splashed all over Bonbon's face and hair. Tapioca pearls flew like shrapnel. A moment of stunned silence hung in the air. The Slumber King, clearly not accustomed to being doused with sugary tea, recoiled with a furious shriek. Bonbon's body staggered back, the crown on her head slipping askew as tea dribbled down her nose. I had to clap a hand over my mouth to keep from bursting out in astonished laughter. Lotion remained impressively deadpan. "Oops," he said, one corner of his mouth quirking up. "My bad. Did I spill?" The tone of fake innocence and the cheeky emphasis on spill was not lost on anyone. Bonbon's eyes burned with an otherworldly red light now, the spirit's anger boiling over. "Insolent wretch!" the Slumber King howled. It was a fearsome cry that rattled the windows and even caused the light bulb in the nearest lamp to burst with a pop, plunging that corner of the room into darkness. Shards of glass tinkled to the carpet. The friends flinched in terror, a few giving short screams, all except Lotion, who merely raised an eyebrow as if mildly impressed. "Your Majesty," Lotion said with a calmness that bordered on cocky, "you look a little, well, drained." He gestured at the tea dripping from Bonbon's face. I, Alvazirius, couldn't help but admire his nerve. Here was a malevolent spirit, raging before him, and Lotion met it with snarky quips as though this were a schoolyard squabble. It was equal parts ridiculous and heroic. The spirit was livid. Bonbon's body lunged at Lotion, surprisingly fast given its awkward jerking movements. But Lotion was ready. With agile ease, he sidestepped, causing Bonbon to stumble past him. "Missed me!" he chimed in a sing-song voice. The Slumber King spun around with a snarl, swinging Bonbon's arm wildly. Lotion ducked the swipe, then lightly tapped Bonbon's back with his foot, propelling her forward. Not a kick to hurt, just a cheeky nudge, provoking the spirit further. Bonbon's possessed form toppled onto the couch with a grunt. I caught a glimpse of some of the friends. They stared in awe at Lotion, the shock momentarily replacing their fear. Was their prankster friend really outwitting a ghost? Enraged, the Slumber King made Bonbon levitate up from the couch. Bonbon's body rose a foot off the cushions, hovering, her limbs dangling like a puppet on strings. This sight was truly chilling, a clear sign that something supernatural held sway. Shy-Torn sobbed softly at the sight, and Big Mom 26 clutched her in a protective hug, both shaking. The crown still clung to Bonbon's head, somehow defying gravity along with her. From midair, Bonbon's mouth opened and that dual-toned voice boomed. "You will all fear me. I have ruled many a night, and you dare to laugh?" The room lights flickered wildly, and the remaining intact candle blew out, leaving only the ghastly light of the TV, which now showed a distorted face on the screen. The Slumber King's visage, eyes glaring. A low rumble resonated, perhaps thunder outside, or perhaps the very foundation of the house trembling from the spirit's fury. Lotion shielded his eyes for a moment against the flicker. Still, he remained strangely unimpressed. "Ruling the night? That's cool and all," he called out breezily, "but you're crashing our party, dude. Very uncool." He wagged a finger as if scolding a misbehaving child. The sheer casualness of his words made Orf, who was cowering behind an upturned coffee table, blink in disbelief. I noticed something then. While the Slumber King bellowed and focused its wrath on Lotion, the weight pinning the others down had lessened. One by one, they were struggling back to their feet, the oppressive force not fully on them as before. It seemed the spirit's power, tied to fear and intimidation, was being diverted. Lotion's defiance was weakening its hold on the others. The Slumber King must have sensed this shift as well. With a growl, Bonbon's floating form lunged forward again, this time more cautiously, swiping an arm at Lotion from a distance. To my astonishment, as her arm moved, a gust of force, like an invisible claw, sliced through the air at Lotion. He was knocked back, stumbling into the pile of pillows and blankets. The friends cried out in unison as their brave friend went down. The spirit let out a triumphant cackle. For the first time, I saw Lotion wince in genuine pain and effort as he got back on his feet. A scratch glistened on his forearm where that invisible force had struck, but he wiped it with his pajama sleeve, unfazed. "All right, your royal creepiness," he muttered under his breath, still loud enough for us to hear. "No more Mr. Nice Guy." Despite the seriousness of the declaration, he followed it with a wry grin. Lotion quickly scanned the room and grabbed something from the floor, a handful of small objects from where Big Mom 26's snack tray had spilled. In the dull light, I could see what they were. A bunch of gummy candies and leftover tapioca pearls from the burst boba cup. With a flourish, Lotion held up one particular gummy, a sugar-dusted peach ring, between his fingers as if it were a sacred talisman. The Slumber King paused, perhaps confused by this strange behavior. "What is the meaning of this?" it snarled, eyes wary. Lotion just smirked. You want us to fear you, mighty Slumber King? How about you taste a bit of this instead? And with that, in one swift motion, he hurled the handful of sticky sweets directly at Bonbon's levitating form. It was not a conventional weapon by any means, but the moment had a slapstick charm that made my heart leap in amusement. The candies pelting Bonbon's body did no physical harm, of course, but they did accomplish something unexpected. The sheer audacity of it left the spirit momentarily stunned. A gummy bear stuck to Bonbon's forehead. A tapioca pearl bounced off the crown with a plasticky ping. A jelly worm got tangled in her hair. The absurdity hung in the air. Bonbon's lips twitched, the spirit at a loss for words for once. Taking advantage of the distraction, Lotion advanced, slowly but confidently. You know, he said conversationally, brushing off his pajama onesie. In all the horror movies, the ghost always does the whole I am ancient and powerful shtick, but they never meet someone like me. He flashed a grin so cheeky, I almost saw the Slumber King recoil. By now, the others had regrouped in a tight cluster behind Lotion. I saw newfound hope shining in their eyes, mixed with total disbelief. Jade Lynn clutched a pillow as a weapon. Orf held a Bible he'd grabbed from a shelf. When did he get that? I wondered amusedly. And First Forever had armed himself with a spatula from the snack tray. It would have been comical if not for the very real possessed friend floating before them. The Slumber King's fury returned with a vengeance. With a guttural cry, Bonbon's body lunged one final time, crown glinting. But this time, Lotion was ready to finish it. As Bonbon's hands reached out, Lotion sidestepped and thrust out a large mirror, the one Jadelyn had propped in a corner for doing makeovers earlier. Lotion had snatched it up quietly in the chaos. He held it up directly in front of Bonbon. The sudden reflection of Bonbon's face, her eyes glowing red, hair messy and flecked with candy, and that tilted crown caught the spirit by surprise. In that split second, Bonbon's expression faltered. I even thought I saw a flicker of the real Bonbon's confusion breaking through. The Slumber King hesitated, staring at itself in the mirror. And in that crucial moment of distraction, Lotion spoke in a soft, firm tone, quite unlike his playful banter before. "Time to leave, Your Majesty. This party's over for you." With that, Lotion flipped the mirror and slammed it downward, not onto Bonbon, but onto the floor at her feet, shattering it into countless pieces with a resounding crash. This was a bold move. Breaking a mirror is 7 years bad luck, they say. But in the realm of spirits, mirrors are powerful. The shards reflected the room and the spirit in chaotic, fragmented ways. Bonbon's body convulsed, the Slumber King's hold clearly disrupted. The entity let out a howl, as if suddenly being sucked backward. The broken mirror's reflection seemed to warp, a distorted image of Bonbon's figure stretching and twisting on each glass piece. In a burst of what I can only describe as shadowy mist, the spirit was torn from Bonbon. The dark mist writhed, momentarily coalescing into a vague shape above, a crown-like outline, and then dissipated with a final screech that faded into the ether. The oppressive atmosphere lifted at once. The lights stopped flickering and returned to their gentle, steady glow. The static on the TV blinked off, switching itself back to the pause movie menu. Bonbon collapsed onto the soft cushions of the couch with a gasp, freed from the possession. The plastic crown fell off her head and clattered to the floor among the mirror shards and candy. For a long moment, nobody moved or spoke. All that was heard was Bonbon's ragged breathing and the hum of the refrigerator upstairs kicking on. Power had fully returned. I slowly exhaled a breath I realized I'd been holding. It was over. Crowning the true Slumber King, Big Mom 26 was the first to react. She rushed to Bonbon's side, gently helping her sit up. Bonbon's eyes were back to their warm brown, wide with confusion and tears. "What happened?" Bonbon whispered, voice shaky and back to normal. She looked at her friends' faces, then down at the sticky candy and tea all over her pajamas. "Why am I all wet? And why does my head hurt?" The group erupted in a flood of relief and joy. Jadelyn and Shy Torn practically tackled Bonbon in a tight hug, with Jadelyn laughing and sobbing, "You're okay. Oh, thank goodness you're okay." Orf was babbling excitedly. "Bonbon, you were possessed! It was insane! And Lotion, Orf turned to where Lotion stood, intending to praise him, but was startled mid-sentence. Lotion was still by the shattered mirror, standing quietly. The adrenaline of battle was fading, and now he looked a bit sheepish, as if only just realizing what he'd done. A thin cut on his cheek caught the light, likely from a flying shard of glass, and his sloth print onesie was dusted with plaster from the wall and a few candy stains. He rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry about the mirror, Jade," he mumbled, referring to Jadelyn's broken mirror. "Typical Lotion," casually apologizing for a broken item right after saving everyone's skins. Jadelyn let go of Bonbon and nearly knocked Lotion over with a hug. "Forget the mirror! You saved us!" she cried. One by one, the others joined, surrounding Lotion in a jubilant group hug. Red Bull 777 playfully mussed Lotion's hair, laughing in disbelief. "Dude, you faced off with a freaking ghost! That was insane!" First forever, still catching his breath, clapped Lotion on the back. I guess we know who the bravest of us is now." Even Clenwy, who was usually composed and cool, wiped a tear and smiled gratefully at Lotion. Bonbon, still shaky on her feet, managed a grin and whispered, "Thank you," to her friend, who stood up to the monster that had used her like a puppet. I watched this all with a full heart. The terror of moments ago was already melting into triumphant warmth. It amazed me how quickly youth bounces back, from fright to laughter, especially with a friend like Lotion to lead them through it. As they pulled apart from the hug, Big Mom 26 suddenly gasped softly and pointed. "Look!" On the floor, amid the glittering pieces of mirror, lay the gold toy crown. But it no longer looked aged or ominous. It was just as it had been at the start of the night, a slightly scuffed, cheaply bedazzled party crown. A harmless trinket once more. The evil that had tainted it was gone. Lotion bent down and picked up the crown. A remaining gummy bear that had landed inside it plopped out onto his hand, and he chuckled, popping the candy into his mouth. He gave the crown a little shake to dislodge a few glass fragments clinging to it. The friends watched him with expectant smiles. In the soft light now, Lotion's playful grin returned in full as he understood the unspoken suggestion in their eyes. Bonbon cleared her throat, attempting a regal tone, though it quavered. "Lotion, for extraordinary bravery and supreme level-headedness in the face of ghostly danger." She paused and broke into a wide smile. "We crown you the one and only Slumber King of the night." Jadelyn and Big Mom 26 giggled and made a faux drum roll on their knees as Bonbon lifted the crown. Lotion knelt with exaggerated grace, bowing his head. "Oh, I humbly accept this great honor," he said, eyes twinkling. There was still a touch of his trademark cheekiness. "I promise to only use my awesome powers for good, and maybe to prank you all just a little." They all laughed. Bonbon placed the crown on Lotion's head. It sat at a jaunty angle over his messy hair, and everyone cheered. Long live Lotion, the true slumber king. In that moment, any remaining tension evaporated, replaced by pure joy and camaraderie. Red Bull 777 started chanting, "Slumber King, Slumber King," and soon they all joined in, clapping and whooping. Lotion struck a silly pose, flexing his arms like a victorious champion, playing up the moment and sending the group into fits of laughter. The night wound down with the friends collapsing onto the couches and beanbags, exhausted but exhilarated. They tended to each other. Jadelyn fetched Band-Aids for Lotion's minor cuts. Big Mom 26 handed Bonbon a towel to wipe off the sticky tea. Clen Y, naturally, started picking up the broken mirror pieces with care. They all talked over each other, recounting their perspectives of the frightful ordeal. And then you splashed it with the boba. I thought I was dreaming when she started floating. Lotion, you should have seen your face when you threw those gummies. Absolutely legendary. Bonbon, now wrapped in a fuzzy blanket, leaned over to Lotion, who was lounging like a content cat with the crown still on his head. "Seriously," she said softly, "thank you for saving me, for saving all of us." Her eyes were sincere, filled with gratitude. Lotion gave her a gentle smile, a rarer, sincere expression from the usually teasing boy. "Hey, what are friends for? Besides," he added with a wink, back to his impish self, "I couldn't let some ghost steal my thunder. I had my eyes on that crown all night." They both laughed, the sound light and free. As dawn neared, the slumber party friends found themselves dozing off one by one, the adrenaline finally ebbing away. They huddled together amidst the pillows and blankets like survivors of a wild adventure. Which indeed they were. The once haunted crown now rested peacefully on its rightful king's head, and there it remained even as Lotion nodded off, snoring softly to the others' amusement. I, Alvazarius, took one last look at the scene, a basement that had seen fear and courage in equal measure this night. The evil was gone, banished by an unlikely hero's wit and bravery. The friends were safe, bonded even closer by the ordeal. The soft early light of morning began creeping in through the window where the knocking had come from, as if assuring that no dark presence lurked there now. In my eternal duty as observer, I felt a rare swell of pride. This was a tale I would carry with me, a tale of horror turned to laughter, of a mischief maker named Lotion who stood up to a malevolent spirit and triumphed through sheer nerve and cleverness. Truly, a slumber party none of them would ever forget. As I slipped away into the dawn, leaving the friends to their well-earned rest, one thought warmed my ancient soul. Sometimes the greatest heroes wear crowns of plastic and victory in the form of a cheeky smile. And in this little corner of the world, for this one unforgettable night, Lotion was the undisputed slumber king.